Hey, it's Angel, the hunting gear guy again. Today I want to talk about shooting in cold weather. Now, I'm just going to do this rapid fire, go over a couple of rifles, show you guys some footage of me shooting when it was really cold out, and then come back to some of the most problematic rifles and just kind of go over kind of some of the things you can do with them. Just to start things off, a traditional bolt-action rifle, this is actually one rifle that I don't have to do a lot with to stop jamming or to make it fire better in the winter. With something like this, like typically the only thing I'm really looking for is to make sure that there's no oil inside the bolt. That's where that firing pin and that firing mechanism is going to be, and that's primarily what I'm going to be concerned about with this is if I have oil or like a typical oil that might freeze in there. That might give me some problems, but the actual act of turning this thing, it's going to have to be pretty iced up for me not to be able to break that. So bolt action rifles, I don't really do anything too special with when I'm going out deer hunting in November here in Alberta. It's really typical for us to see minus 20 Celsius, minus 30 Celsius some weeks. So in all my years of hunting, I've never really had a problem with a bolt-action rifle. Again, I don't over-oil the bolts though. I try to keep them really nice and light. I don't like dunk a bunch into that mechanism there. Now, another rifle that I've had a lot of experience with hunting in cold weather is lever action rifles. These can get, just because there's a lot more mechanics going on with these, there's a couple of things that you need to look out for. Mostly just keep making sure that you also have that, if any oil at all, a really light coating of oil. Whereas with that bolt action rifle, we had a nice meaty bolt that we could beat open if it got a little bit too frosty. With a lever action, there's so many different parts and pieces that are binding together inside of these things that you really don't want to make, you want to make sure that you're not getting the inside of these things frozen, because it will fight you to try to pull back. Now, this one's hammer actuated. I think there's very, very few striker fired lever action rifles out there. And hammer's actually a little bit better. You can see it a lot easier. You can see problems with it a lot better if you see that it's not hitting that pin there. It's very easy to verify that it's not hitting it, and then do something about it, right? Either warming up that part or whatever the case might be. So a little bit more problematic than a bolt action, but still pretty good. You know, we've got a center fire here. We've still got a lever with a lot of leverage on it, and that hammer is going to make it easier to see where the problems might be. Now, where things might get a little bit harder is with a semi-automatic firearm. Especially the AR-15s. These ones, at least the ones that I've had, I find that they work really well when they have lots of oil in the bolt. And oil is just a common gun oil is one of those things that's going to give you problems when it gets really, really cold out. So for something like this, this is where you might want to look into using a different lube altogether. Using one that's going to work in cold weather. There's a couple of different options on here. I'm going to leave them in the description just so you've got options out there. But again, like, I really wouldn't want to run one of these dry, because they really do need some lube to function really reliably, and especially in the cold weather, I'd rather they have that instead of not offering it to them. Now, the most vulnerable rifles to cold weather, at least in my opinion, are rimfire rifles, and especially semi-automatic rimfire rifles. But at this moment, for whatever reason, I don't really have one, so I thought I'd show you this bolt-action rimfire, which is still going to suffer from the same problems that a lot of other rimfire rifles are going to have. And I'm just going to roll some footage right now of shooting some rimfire rifles, both Henry AR-7 and Henry lever action, just to show the kind of failures that you can see with those rifles.
Hey, it's Angel, the hunting gear guy. I've got this Henry US survival rifle. It's got a lot of plastic on it, so I wanted to see how it worked in the cold. Right now it's minus 30, I'm just freezing. I'm going to run 2 mags through this thing. and one. Didn't really hit that one very hard. Should be starting to freeze up. Doesn't like the cold weather. Try mag 2. Couple jams. Right. Doesn't exactly have a glove lever for it, but let's do a cold weather reliability test on this Henry lever 22. A couple failure to fires there. Might be a bit too cold.
Pretty gnarly stuff, right? I mean, that's just the thing with rimfire rifles is they don't have a big strong spring like a lot of the centerfire rifles to kind of hit the rim, and they've got a lot of smaller parts that are kind of working together. So those smaller parts can freeze quite easily, and that's going to cause us problems when we're out in the field and it's kind of cold out. So I thought I'd show you kind of what to do with a rimfire rifle. I'm going to use this bolt action as an example. A semi is going to be a better example because they jam more when it's cold, but I'm going to use this one and just kind of show you what I do to reduce the amount of jams and the failure to fires that I see with rimfires when I shoot them in the cold. Now, there's a couple of different parts on a rimfire that you might want to look at. The trigger mechanism is one. The bolt on this one isn't going to be a problem for me. If this was a semi-automatic, that might become a problem. And then the last one is the hammer or the striker system, and that's the one I'm going to focus on with this one. I'm just going to pull out my bolts here. And I literally didn't prep at all for this video. I'm just kind of pulling out this this bolt that I had kind of handy. Let's take a look at that thing. Just going to wait till it focuses in. And you can see that I've got a little bit of oil sitting on it. This is something of a match for a precision rifle, so it does need a little bit more oil. It's got a tighter bolt fit on it, so I kind of like keeping this thing doused with oil. But that's not really going to help me when it gets cold. So let's look at what we can do with this thing when it gets cold. Now I've got my my blue napkin here just handy, and what I'm going to be doing is, you know, anytime you start seeing drips of oil on your bolt, that's when you know you've got a little bit too much. So this one's had time for the oil to kind of collect in some places, and all I'm going to do is just kind of lightly wipe that off. I'm not wiping off all the oil, I'm not scrubbing it off, I'm just kind of like roughly touching on it just to get that surface oil off. Because that's the surface oil that's going to start to gum up and freeze on me. And again, you can get a dedicated cold weather oil if you like, but for me, I'd rather just use the standard CLP stuff that I use for everything, and just kind of keep it simple. I love keeping things simple. Oh geez, now I got to remember how to break the bolt on this thing. Oh, let's see. I think, yeah, we operate like that. I'm going to pull it open. I remember oiling this thing originally, so I've got probably a little bit too much in there. Here's that spring. We can see we're pulling off lots of oil with that guy. That's good, because that's all oil that could potentially cause me problems. I'm planning on taking this thing out, and it's still right around the -20 mark in kind of some of the places I'd potentially like to go. So I'd like to keep this thing nice and clean. And you see right inside that bolt sleeve, let me see, I wonder if I can get it to focus on that. It's kind of got a sheen in there, so again, that's also where there's a little bit too much oil. I'm just gonna wipe it off. You know, even after wiping it with this cloth, it's still got a really light gloss of oil on there. So it's not like I'm taking all the oil off. You know, if you were to run it through an ultrasonic cleaner or something like that, that's where you might be able to get it all off. But for me, I'm just going to give everything just a real quick light wipe. I think my cat wants in. Coming in. Okay, come on. Okay, so get the oil off here. Now, this is one area that you'll want to pay a lot of attention to if you're shooting a rimfire. The firing pin channel and the firing pin itself, because this is usually really tight. This is where you'll find a lot of the, not even rounded, but the flattened style firing pins. And those ones have a lot of surface area for what they are. That's definitely where you want to make sure you've got them nice and cleaned and free of all of excess oil on them. So I'm just going to grab my bolt sleeve here. I mean, having this amount of oil on a rimfire, this is great for storing it and keeping it nice and fresh and making sure it doesn't rust. But if you're going to take it out when it's really, really frosty out, this isn't the best. And I recognize that. Now, one of the things you might want to look at getting access to, and these are really easy. You can get these at like craft supply stores and that kind of thing. Are some of these pipe cleaners? These pipe cleaners are where you can get in where it's kind of difficult to get in otherwise, and just kind of get all that excess oil off. So I can chuck it in there, and you can see it very easily passes right through the firing pin area there, that recess. And we can get it right out. I mean, these things were built for cleaning out like tiny little pipes, and you can see here that they're great for getting that firing pin channel clean and clear of any excess oil. I'm just kind of wiping that off. You know, the other method that you might want to try if you can't get access to it or you don't have some pipe cleaners is just to hit this with some compressed air. So if you have an air compressor, if you can get some of that canned air, all that stuff's going to help you blow off a lot of this excess oil. It's just, if you go that route, you kind of have to be in your garage or something because you're going to be blowing oil all over the place, and I'd rather have it all on this sheet kind of thing. That's starting to look really nice and clean. I mean, again, it still has like an oily feel to it. It still has a real thin film on it, and for a rifle like this, it's not so sensitive that I'm going to take it all off. But it's definitely getting a lot better, and I've pulled a lot off. You can even use these pipe cleaners to get into some really difficult to get into recesses, or it'd be kind of a pain in the butt if all you had was a paper towel or whatever, right? That's looking really good. And again, on a semi-automatic rimfire rifle, you're going to want to be real careful making sure that you get your bolt and your bolt raceways and any kind of recoil spring really nice and clean and clear. So I've got my bolt pieces really nicely cleaned off. I'm just going to really quickly reassemble now. It's been a while since I've taken this bolt apart, but I've got it all back together again. And this is one thing that I kind of like doing on some of my rimfires after I've got the bolt clean, is I'm going to just throw that off to the side. Let's Pull the magazine out, check it, make sure it doesn't have any too much excess oil. And then all I'm going to do is get right into that bolt track and just kind of clean it off. Now, it's going to be a little bit, you know, just because I've got a lot of this oil off, it's not going to be as smooth to use, but that's better than having it freeze up on me and just kind of be a pain in the butt when it's cold out. You know, this is pretty clean here. I'm just looking at these pieces, so that's looking pretty good. Let's reinstall that bolt. So it's a little bit more stiff, but at least it won't freeze. So I wanted to show you guys just really quick what I do on some of my rifles when it's getting cold and I need to kind of keep them running. Again, there are lubricants out there built for cold weather. Me personally, I like to keep things simple. I like my just standard CLP oils, so I just go with a real light film or practically none at all on these things. Our winters here are very dry, so I don't have to worry as much about corrosion and rust and that kind of thing because it's so dry, and because as long as I kind of wipe this off after I come in from the cold, that'll get rid of the condensation and I'm good to go. So hope you found this useful, and hopefully your rifles don't freeze up on you when you're out shooting in cold weather. Thanks for watching. Bye.